In the heart of the Horn of Africa, a region scarred by decades of conflict and famine, one man stands as a master of chaos. Isaias Afwerki, the president of Eritrea. To some, he was once a revolutionary hero, a liberator who fought for his nation's independence. But to many others, he has become a shadowy figure, a puppeteer pulling strings from his isolated capital, Asmara. His game? A complex web of secret alliances and regional power plays designed not to build, but to destabilize. His ultimate goal? To maintain his iron grip on power, no matter the cost to his people or the region. Today, we're peeling back the layers of secrecy to expose the quiet alliances and devastating strategies of Eritrea's leader. How does one man, leading one of the world's most reclusive nations, manage to fuel so much of the Horn of Africa's turmoil? This is the story of Isaias Afwerki's secret war for control. To understand Isaias Afwerki, you have to understand his journey. He wasn't born a dictator. He was forged in the crucible of a 30-year-long war for Eritrea's independence from Ethiopia. When Eritrea finally gained its independence in 1993, the world watched with hope. Isaias was hailed as part of a new generation of African leaders, promising democracy, development, and a brighter future. But that promise quickly faded. The liberator became the autocrat. The hope for a democratic Eritrea was replaced by the reality of a one-party state, where Isaias Afwerki holds absolute power. There have been no national elections since independence. The Constitution, ratified in 1997, was never implemented. His comrades from the war, those who dared to question his authority, were imprisoned, never to be seen again. This consolidation of power wasn't just about controlling Eritrea. It was the foundation for his grander, more destructive ambitions in the region. The core of Isaias's strategy lies in a simple, cynical principle: a stable, prosperous, and united Horn of Africa is a threat to his rule. Specifically, a strong and influential Ethiopia, the regional giant next door, is his greatest fear. This isn't just a remnant of their past border war, it's a strategic calculation. A successful Ethiopia would serve as a powerful contrast to his own struggling, isolated state. It could inspire dissent among Eritreans and diminish his own influence. So, his primary foreign policy objective has been to weaken Ethiopia at every turn. He doesn't need to defeat Ethiopia in a conventional war. He just needs to keep it off balance, embroiled in internal conflicts, and preoccupied with its own problems. This is where his network of secret alliances comes into play, a shadowy game of chess where other nations' pawns are used to serve his agenda. One of his most significant yet least discussed alliances is with Egypt. On the surface, Eritrea and Egypt seem like unlikely partners. But they share a common strategic interest: the Nile River. For Egypt, the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, or GERD, is an existential threat. They fear it will choke off their water supply, the lifeblood of their nation for millennia. Ethiopia, on the other hand, sees the dam as essential for its development and energy independence. Isaias saw an opportunity in this high-stakes dispute. By quietly aligning with Egypt, he gains a powerful ally in his quest to pressure and contain Ethiopia. Reports and analyses from regional experts point to back-channel communications, intelligence sharing, and coordinated diplomatic pressure. While Egypt publicly engages in diplomacy, Isaias can act as a more disruptive force, creating a two-front problem for Addis Ababa. This alliance allows him to leverage a major geopolitical conflict to further his own goal of keeping his larger neighbor perpetually distracted and weakened. It's a classic Isaias move: find the fault lines and exploit them. But his strategy goes far beyond diplomatic maneuvering. Isaias has a long and well-documented history of supporting armed groups and militias across the region to sow chaos. Think of him as a regional agent of instability. From Somalia to Sudan, and within Ethiopia itself, his fingerprints can often be found on conflicts that seem to have erupted out of nowhere. For years, he provided support to extremist groups in Somalia, not because he shared their ideology, but because they were fighting the Ethiopian-backed government. The goal was simple: bog Ethiopia down in a costly and draining conflict, keeping its military occupied far from Eritrea's border. This earned him international condemnation and heavy UN sanctions, but for Isaias, it was a price worth paying. The sanctions further isolated Eritrea, which perversely reinforced his narrative of a world conspiring against his small nation, a useful tool for maintaining control over his own people. This pattern of supporting proxies reached a new and devastating peak with the recent conflict in Ethiopia's Tigray region. When war broke out between the Ethiopian federal government and the Tigray People's Liberation Front, the TPLF, Isaias saw his ultimate opportunity. The TPLF were his old archenemies, the party that governed Ethiopia during their brutal border war. He didn't just offer support, he sent his own army across the border. Eritrean troops became key players in the conflict, accused of committing some of its worst atrocities. For Isaias, this was the culmination of decades of planning. He was not just helping an ally, he was actively dismantling his old foe and attempting to reshape the political landscape of Ethiopia in his favor. He sought to cripple the TPLF permanently and ensure that no single group within Ethiopia could challenge his regional influence again. The human cost was staggering, with hundreds of thousands of lives lost and a humanitarian crisis that shocked the world. But in the cold calculus of Isaias Afwerki, it was a strategic success. While Isaias plays this dangerous game of regional chess, it is the Eritrean people who pay the highest price. Life inside Eritrea is a stark reality of control and stagnation. The country is often called the North Korea of Africa, and for good reason. There is no independent media. The internet is heavily restricted and excruciatingly slow. Dissent is not tolerated, and the prisons are filled with political opponents, journalists, and anyone deemed a threat to the regime. But the most crushing aspect of life for many is the system of indefinite national service. Upon finishing high school, every young man and woman is conscripted into the military or civil service, often for decades. It's a system that has been condemned by human rights organizations as a form of modern-day slavery. It strips the youth of their future, their ambitions, and their freedom. It has created a generation of people with no hope for a normal life, forcing hundreds of thousands to flee the country, undertaking perilous journeys across deserts and seas in search of a future that cannot have at home. This mass exodus of its own youth is a national tragedy, but for the regime, it serves a purpose. It removes potential dissenters and creates a population dependent on the state. The constant threat of war, real or manufactured, is used to justify this endless servitude. The chaos Isaias fuels abroad is the very excuse he uses to impose absolute control at home. His influence extends to the Red Sea, one of the world's most critical maritime choke points. Control over its coastline gives Eritrea significant strategic value. Isaias has skillfully played rival powers against each other, courting investment and military presence from nations like the UAE and Saudi Arabia, who are vying for influence in the region. He offers them a foothold in a volatile area, and in return, he gains economic lifelines and diplomatic cover that help him withstand international pressure. He presents himself as a bulwark against chaos, even as he is the one lighting the fires. This allows him to punch far above his weight on the international stage. He turns his country's strategic location into a commodity, selling access and influence to the highest bidder. This creates a complex web of dependencies where major global powers have a vested interest in maintaining the status quo in Eritrea, further entrenching his rule. The Red Sea rivalry becomes another board for his game, another way to ensure his own survival. So, what is the end game? For Isaias Afwerki, the end game is survival. His entire political life has been defined by conflict. He thrives in it. Peace, stability, democracy, and regional integration are threats to his absolute authority. A peaceful Horn of Africa would leave him with no justification for his militarized state, no excuse for the indefinite national service, and no boogeyman to blame for his country's failures. His strategy of fueling chaos is not a temporary tactic, it is his permanent doctrine. He backs rebels, sows distrust between neighbors, and blocks any meaningful peace initiatives because a region in turmoil is a region he can influence. His secret alliances with Egypt, his support for militias, his intervention in Ethiopia, it all serves one purpose: to prevent the emergence of a stable regional order that could sideline him and expose the failings of his regime. He is the perpetual spoiler, the man who would rather reign over a burning region than be a quiet neighbor in a peaceful one. But the critical question remains, how long can this last? Isaias Afwerki is in his late 70s. He has built a system that is entirely centered on him. There is no clear succession plan, no institution that can function without him. He has kept the Horn of Africa burning for decades, but fire is unpredictable. The alliances he has forged are ones of convenience, not of trust. The proxies he supports can be turned against him. The regional powers he plays with have their own agendas. Most importantly, the suffering of the Eritrean people has a limit. The quiet desperation inside the country and the growing diaspora outside represent a force that cannot be contained forever. The man who built his power on instability may find that the very chaos he has cultivated could one day become the inferno that consumes his regime. The secret alliances may unravel, and the chess master could find himself checkmated by the very pieces he thought he controlled. Thank you for watching via eGreen channel. The story of the Horn of Africa is complex, and understanding the motivations of its key players is crucial. If you found this analysis insightful, please consider liking this video and subscribing to eGreen channel for more deep dives into the critical issues shaping our world. We value your perspective, so please share your thoughts in the comments below. Stay informed, and see you next time.